With 40 days left until the June 23rd exam for Level 2, it might be helpful to prioritize at this point. Ideally, you'd like to go into the exam saying, you know what, I got every section. But as we get closer to the exam, a little less than 6 weeks left, you might be feeling a little bit of pressure right now, thinking, well, you know, I'm not going to get through it all. How do I think about how I want to approach my preparation from here on in? So I've broken down the sections, all 10 sections, into 3 groups. The group at the top here, these are the most important sections based on weighting of the exam. And we don't know the exact weighting, we just have ranges. But FRA is 15 to 20%, fixed income is 10 to 20, equity is 15 to 25, and ethics is 10 to 15. So the sum of these are anywhere from 50 to 80. I doubt that the weighting would be as high as 80 on these 4 sections, but you've got a minimum of 50% out of these 4 sections. I sort of think that, well, it'll be a little bit more than the minimum. I am going to about 60%. And in blue, I have the number of vignettes that you can expect to see from each section. So FRA anywhere from 3 to 4, fixed income 2 to 4, equity is 3 to 5, and ethics 2 to 3, with this, the first number being the minimum that you would expect to see. So roughly about 12 vignettes out of the 20 are going to come from those 4 sections. And the 2 big ones, FRA minimum of 15 and equity minimum of 15, there's 30% of the exam in just those 2 sections. So for this first group, FRA, fixed income, equity, and ethics, you really have to go in there with those under your belt, knowing those, because that's 60, my estimation, right in around the 60% mark of the exam. I'll explain what the numbers are in brackets in front of these shortly. Corporate finance derivatives, this is the next category, anywhere from 5 to 15%. And the reason I put them there is because if we look at the last 4, alternative investments, portfolio management, quant, and economics, anywhere from 5 to 10. So there's a probability that the corporate finance and derivatives might be weighted more heavily than these 4. That's why I sort of put them on their own. So anywhere from 1 to 3 vignettes for these 2, and anywhere from 1 to 2 vignettes for those 4. And yes, vignettes can cross readings. In other words, it is possible to have a vignette that has questions from multiple readings. It doesn't all have to be contained to just one reading. So if you were going to prioritize at this point, I sort of seem to think that you'd want to work your way down this list and say, well, you know what, these top 4, FRA, fixed income, equity, and ethics, I better go in there really knowing that. Over 75, over 80% certain about those. And then for the bottom ones, you can pick and choose. You can say, well, you know, of those 6, which one do I feel most comfortable with, and make sure you have that, and sort of work your way down on level of comfort, because it'll be easier to prepare for those, easier to review those and to study for those. The ones that you find most challenging out of the ones at the bottom, it is okay to let some things go. So as you're going through, let's say, economics, and there's a reading in there that you're not quite certain of, whether it's there's 2 difficult readings, or I shouldn't say difficult, but challenging readings in economics. One is on currency exchange rates. The other is on economic growth, and specifically the neoclassical growth model that you have to go through. Well, you know, if you find that look, you know, I can get them, but it's going to take, it's going to take at least a day and a half of me really diving deep on this to get it. That day or day and a half might be better spent on something else you know you will get, as opposed to something you've had trouble with in the past that you're not quite certain with. It's okay to let some things go further down that list. As long as you have that top category and at least 3 to 4 of these bottom 6, if you've got to let economics go for the sake of bringing up some other categories, for the time that you would spend on economics for a maybe that you could spend on, let's say, corporate finance for an absolute, then yeah, those are the decisions you have to make at this point. Again, ideally, you want to go in understanding it all and knowing it all and being comfortable with every section. But with 40 days left, that luxury is probably gone now. So now you have to prioritize. So I hope that sort of gives you some way to think about how you want to approach your review at this point in time. And there is some benefit to saying, you know what, I'm going to let 2 or 3 readings just go, because it calms you down, it relaxes you. Suddenly that's out of the way. You've become comfortable with that. And it allows you to focus more on the other sections that you know you're going to get 80, 85, or 90% on. And then if you have time, go back and review those sections that you were going to let go, because there'll be some conceptual questions. You might be able to get half of the questions. And remember, guessing is still a valid strategy. Even if you let something go, if you have to guess your way through it, guessing your way through a vignette, if you say, I'm just going to guess B all the way down, averages say that's at least worth 33%. So you still have that to fall back on, which again is not really a strategy you want to develop going in. But if you got to prioritize and you got to let some things go, it's not as if you're going to get 0 on the things you let go. So you can get comfortable with that. You're not going to get 0, but you're not going to get 80, 90%. You'll get somewhere in between. Maybe you're shooting for 33 to 60%, somewhere in there. That's fine for the small sections. What I've listed here in yellow are the resources you have, and I think the order in which you'd want to make sure that you have the expertise in. The blue box examples throughout the readings, those are fantastic because they really break down what they're doing step by step. So rather, if you feel the need to review a reading, I wouldn't read the content. I would just go from blue box to blue box to blue box and read and work my way through those examples. That's it. That's all I would do. Then I would go to the end of chapter questions and I would start tackling those. And yes, perhaps you've seen them before, but as you work your way through them again, maybe you forgot how you got the answer the last time. From there, move on to the CFA website. They have a bunch of vignettes on there for you at level 2. I shouldn't say a bunch. They've got, I think a showing, 1 or 2 at least each reading, which I think is good. And I think they give you 2 mock exams at level 2, which I wouldn't pass up on. I definitely do those. On our site, we do have some vignettes spread across the sections, and we do have some multiple choice questions, but only selected readings. And that's what these brackets here are for. So FRA, the first 3 readings in FRA, we do have multiple choice questions, just standalone multiple choice questions. In fixed income, it's the middle 3 readings that we have multiple choice questions for, quizzes for. Equity, there are 3 readings, reading 30, 31, 32. Ethics, they're not up now, but we do have 2 readings. The code and standards, we've got plenty of questions for. So they're the same at all 3 levels. So we'll populate those Monday or Tuesday. Corporate finance, only the first one has quizzes. We had a writer, and then they just sort of disappeared for that section. Alternative investment, same thing. We have the first reading has questions. We had a writer, but things things sort of just don't stay in place. Just because you find someone doesn't mean they have the motivation, right? Portfolio management, reading 51, which is the more challenging reading, analysis of active portfolio management. I wrote those, so there are I think three quizzes up there. Quant, all readings have quizzes. Economics, all readings have quizzes. So we have a showing of the big categories up here. We have a showing of quizzes at most of the readings up there. And then finally, you have mock exams. The mock exams we have on our site have been provided by IFT, which is our 3rd supplier that we've used for mock exams. We were disappointed by the first 2 altogether, and here's the thing I'll put out there right now. We have looked almost everywhere at level 2 for who does this well, and it appears that nobody does it well, at least from the feedback that we're seeing. And when I actually get to review some of the questions, I've seen almost everybody's question bank. They're so widely available almost everywhere, yeah, nobody really does it well. Sometimes you have good questions, but or good vignettes, good stories, but they all fall apart in the questions. Sometimes the answers or the questions are just fundamentally wrong. So it's At level 2, level 1, there's lots of questions everywhere. Level 2, not so much. Not so much. It takes a lot of skill to write at level 2, and we have found very few who actually have that skill. So when we do find them, we tend to offer them enough to keep going, but few and far between. So if you're having trouble finding good sources of questions out there, yeah, you're not alone. At level 2, it is really hard to find them. And you will find at level 3, it gets even harder to find good question banks out there. So you do have a lot of resources from CFAI. Again, the blue box examples I think are great walkthroughs. The end of chapter questions, there's lots of them there. CFAI website has a whole bunch of stuff there. We have some stuff to support you as well. And if you need mock exams, we do offer mocks, but I think that you have lots from up here that you can that you can use. If you are buying mock exams out there, listen, we have not seen good quality mock exams. In fact, there's a couple of suppliers out there, I would say, without naming names, and I think you know what names I would name if I had to name them, just they're mostly wrong. So you don't really want to learn from wrong exams. They're mostly wrong. So it's hard to find those trustworthy sites. Anyways, that's about the best that I can offer at this point in time. Look, there are no secrets here. You have to walk into that exam with knowledge in your brain. Nobody can tell you that there's an easier way to do this. And anybody who tells you that, oh look, we've got the magic, we've got the secret, you can get in there with 20 hours of review and you'll be fine. It's a crash course and we guarantee that you'll pass. Nobody can do that. Nobody can guarantee that, because that means that they can guarantee that an A student will pass, a B student, a C student, a D student will pass. Now, who can do that at this level? Nobody. Anybody telling you that is just selling you something. Look, learning has been the same way it's been for 5,000 years. It's about putting in the time. You have 40 days left. There is lots of room to put in the time. The most that somebody can do to you is to say to you, here's a smart way to put in the time, and this is what I think I provided for you here. Here is how you should prioritize the time that you're going to put in. Look at these big sections. Make sure you walk in there with those big sections. The smaller sections, it is okay to let some things go. Remember, you need 70%. You don't need 100%. So if you do let some things go, if you say, look, if I can let 2 sections go, I know that I can at least bring my grade up to 80 or 90% on the rest of it. Great. Do that. That's fabulous. And then in those last few days, if you have time, watch the review videos or watch the main videos. Try to walk in with some conceptual knowledge. You don't have to know it all. All right. Last point. Formulas. Don't go crazy trying to memorize all those formulas or write out all those formulas. Don't worry about it. If the learning objective does not use the word calculate and there are formulas, ignore them. You don't need them. If the learning objective says calculate, chances are you're going to need it. So if you go to the quant section, for example, you would think, well, that's where you would calculate, right? Well, no. Because most of the output in those readings in multiple regression and time series, there is no way that you could calculate that output. It will be given to you. The majority of it is to describe, interpret, and identify, that kind of stuff. So just pay attention to the learning objectives. Further, if there are these big, ugly formulas, like in Black-Scholes, the formula to calculate D1 and the formula to calculate D2, don't worry about it, because even if you could calculate D1 and D2, you still have to take that and put it into the normal probability distribution function and find the area under the curve. Well, without a table, you're not going to do that. You will be given those numbers. You're going to be doing a lot of interpreting. Oh, what does that number mean now? So focus on that. So don't get so caught up in the formulas that you miss the point of this. And especially in ethics. Not ethics, equity. Lots of formulas, but some of them are so very long. Don't worry about those really long ones. You have 3 minutes a question. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit more intense than level 1. Level 1 gave you 90 seconds a question. At level 2, you're going to have 3 minutes a question, twice the amount of time. But you got a big story to read, which takes away the time. So that's going to eat away at your time unless you know how to answer those questions right. You always go to the questions first, then you go to the story to hunt for your for the data that you need or the missing variables that you need. There is no way you're going to have a question which requires you to do multiple calculations on your computer that would take you 3-4 minutes just to calculate an answer. There is no way you're going to have. You're going to be given a lot of intermediate steps. So don't worry. Don't worry so much about all of that stuff. So there it is. That's about the best I can offer right now. I hope that prioritizes your process over the next 40 days. And that's it.